Welcome back, everybody, to Chicago Reacts. I'm Zach, an actor in the city of Chicago, and by my side, as always, on the channel,
I'm Michael. I'm also an actor here in Chicago. We actually did a movie recently together, but today we are focusing on some more Warhammer videos. Today we're actually reacting to Death Korps of Krieg explained by an Australian. This was actually suggested by Omar Vernon, so thank you for suggesting this video. If anyone else has videos they want to suggest, feel free to leave it in the comment section down below. We'll make sure to check it out and hopefully get to it.
G'day guys and gal. Staunch, brave, twisted and potentially suicidal. These admirable traits belong to none other than the legendary Death Korps of Krieg. Between picking flowers, making happy gas mask noises and bludgeoning skulls, these brainwashed test tube babies are some of the best the Imperium has to offer. After all, when morale is no longer an issue, the battle is already won. Now, I wanted to make this video a while back for obvious reasons. The Death Korps of Krieg are cool as, and they get lots of views and subscribers, something I kind of need right now to keep my raging fire that is my ego alit. However, my adopted Uncle Voldemort, yes I can adopt whoever I want, made a Death Korps video that was mind-blowing in quality and featured the largest collaboration of Warhammer YouTubers ever seen. Tough act to follow. However, as the saying goes, just because the cow is already milked doesn't mean Major Kill can't milk it again, regardless of how much it hurts the cow. Interpret that how you will. Before we get started, the first episode of the Homebrew Adventures animated series is going live this Friday at 11 AM Australia time, 10 AM Eastern Standard Time, or 3 PM London time. If you haven't heard of me speak of this series, it's basically a fully fledged animation I've been working on with a team of people for the last few months. That is inspired by Alpha Buzz's If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device series. However, my series is very different from that in a number of ways. It follows the adventure of a group of Space Marines from various different homebrew chapters, as well as an Ultramarine, obviously, who are torn away from their chapters and forced to work together in a squadron of misfits as they attempt to kill the demon Primarch Fulgrim. I plan for this to be a massive thing for the channel, and it's already got interest from a company who are considering financing the creation of the rest of the series, depending on the success of the first episode. So if you're keen to see the result of the most effort I've ever put into a single thing, as well as support me, then come down to the premiere. I'll be going live straight after the premiere to talk about the show, its direction, answer any questions, and talk about the team. Also, half of all donations during that after stream will go towards one of the animators who helped me with the video as a big thank you, so get keen for that. Today we're going to go over who the Death Korps of Krieg are and how they ended up as the extremely grim and staunch guardsmen that they are today. We'll also go over some of their larger engagements, their war habits, as well as some fun facts about them. Let's get into it. The galaxy is a big place, and whilst everyone seems to praise the Space Marines as the single greatest power in the Imperium, the reality is there are too few and far between to cover the entire war zone. Hence, over 90% of battles and wars are fought by guardsmen. Different guardsmen regiments come from different planets, hence they have insane levels of diversity. This ranges from guardsmen who shit the bed every time they dream about the horrors they will face, all the way to literal Chuck Norris Rambos who can solo entire armies without breaking a sweat. The Death Korps of Krieg tend to end up on the upper end of that scale, as they have a complete and total lack of regard for their own safety or lives, to a point where the commissars assigned to them do not try to prevent them from retreating, but instead from randomly charging the enemy gun lines with nothing but a shovel. The people of Krieg were not always like this, however. Something pretty uncool happened to the planet which brought them to this level of machicism. See, Krieg wasn't always a radioactive death world. Once, it was a verdant, highly populated imperial hive world, a key trading point and very wealthy. So wealthy was Krieg and so paranoid its rulers that they spent vast amounts of money on planetary defenses and private armies that were loyal to Krieg and not the Imperium that controlled it. Now when you combine paranoia, wealth and a massive ego, you get uppity little cunts. Hence the Lords of Krieg were like, what if we rebel against the Imperium? They probably won't have the resources readily available to retake it from us. Which, despite sounding like a really bad idea, actually wasn't. Krieg was so reinforced from outside invasion that the effort required to retake it would just not have been worth it. Hence, unsurprisingly, Krieg, which is also the German word for war, staged a coup. The Krieg traders ambushed the Loyalists at hundreds of positions, taking over all the hive cities and key locations bar one. The Loyalists were so overwhelmed that there was little they could do to stop this well-funded succession. But the Loyalists of Krieg are based on Germans, and the Germans are great at war. But Major Kill, Germany lost both world wars. Silence your decrepit mouth, Timmy, before I fuck you with a shovel. Just because they lost doesn't mean they weren't good at it. All the girls I sleep with act disappointed and never come back, but that doesn't mean I'm bad at sex. Hence, they dug in and defended their last hive city. The commander of the Loyalists was a man by the name of Colonel Jurten. Starts with a J, but because he's German, the J is silent. Jurten got in contact with the Imperium, who were like, sorry, buddy, not worth our time and effort, you're on your own. So yeah, feel free to destroy the enemy any way you see fit.
Yeah.
And then the Archmagos, who was with Jurten, was like, beep, boop, we have a nuke. So Jurten was like, fuck it, and channeled his inner Kim Jong-un and unleashed atomic genocide upon his own planet. See, whilst the Loyalists were wildly outnumbered and outgunned, they were prepared for a planet-wide nuclear strike. The traitors were not. Let's just say, after the world was reduced to a radioactive wasteland so toxic, it would make the Fallout games look like a holiday destination, and billions of people died. The odds were evened out. Over the next 500 years, the Loyalists and traitor survivors engaged in a violent, hectic war of attrition. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers of razor wire, trenches, and bunkers were built. Both sides became bitter and bloodthirsty. However, the Loyalists began creating their soldiers by using artificial wombs and cloning, meaning they could create large numbers of consistent troops. On top of this, every Loyalist of Krieg was told that they all owed a life debt to the Emperor due to Krieg betraying the Imperium, and that the only way they could repay that debt was by collecting 100 Nazi scalps! By violently dying after taking at least 3.5 heretic lives by shovel smacking with them. At the end of the 500 years, Krieg was nothing more than a smoking crater with thousands of bunkers being built on its surface.
It is an easy way to get a bunch of soldiers.
It was once again under Imperial control.
They owe you a life debt.
Yay! The Imperium took note of this, but didn't really care that much initially. What could have blasted Death World off the Imperium? The answer was serious fuel for the meat grinder that is Warhammer 40k. Krieg offered up 20 fully equipped and trained regiments of guardsmen with more on the way, straight up. On top of that, these soldiers requested to be placed in the most horrific war zones available. Now before we talk about some of those wars and battles they've taken a part in, let's first dial it back and talk about the Kriegsmen and women themselves. While they are fun and badass as an army, the people of Krieg are about as fun and interesting to talk to as a junkie who just overdosed on opioids. They have no names, only numbers. They never remove their armor and face masks in the presence of non-Kriegsmen, and they are clones of each other. Imagine they are like the clones from Star Wars, however you replace their witty quips of brotherly love for each other with 500 years of trench warfare kicked off by nuclear fire. On top of this, it's thought that the average age of the Krieg's guardsmen is really low, as they're sent off to war pretty much as soon as they are ready. If you're trained your entire life, this could be as soon as you were 16 or even 15. As they don't remove their masks and their voices likely have a Darth Vader-esque filter on them, it's really hard to tell even the gender of the Kriegsmen you might be dealing with. Overall, this really ticks a lot of diversity boxes. They're a mix of Germans, so white people, child soldiers, so Africans, clone troopers from Star Wars, so aliens, and they have no regard for human life, so Asians. I think the key to ending racism is by deploying the Death Korps of Krieg. Moving on to some of their wars and engagements now. The Death Korps of Krieg haven't been around super long, despite the massive impact they have already had for the Imperium. So it might surprise you to learn that their first main engagement was the legendary Siege of Vrax. Now the Siege of Vrax was incredibly hectic and long, and I don't want this video to be 10 hours, so the gist of it was that a priest that got too religious and fell to chaos after he spent too much time hanging around orphanages at night time. He then gathered a massive army of zealots and took the planet of Vrax and fortified the living shit out of it, before declaring war on the Imperium. The Death Corps were deployed to the planet by the millions, and after 17 years of non-stop hectic warfare, attrition, and death, in which even Space Marines had to get involved in, the planet was retaken. The next main instance we see the Death Corps of Krieg was during the Fisting of Durandus. That's not what it's officially called, that's just my name for it. Basically, the hive world of Durandus was sick of paying their taxes. So instead of just using a good accountant to claim a bunch of expenses, hence increase their profits, they declared independence from the Imperium and killed the diplomats sent in to resolve the issue. Now, declaring independence from the Imperium of Man is never a good idea.
No,
Krieg
no, no.
and Vrax
No
did
heresy.
it.
It's
They were
heresy.
completely decimated via
what that
metaphorical
is.
anal maceration, and they were some of the most fortified planets in the galaxy. So a single hive city with no army or real defenses is going to have a really bad time. And have a bad time
You're
they did,
gonna
as the
have a
Death Corps of
bad
Krieg
time.
simply begun shelling the city non-stop for 5 years. Anyone who tried to escape the city during this time was gunned down. After 5 years, the city declared its unconditional surrender. In response to this, the Kriegsmen continued to shell the city for another 5 years. The last 2 years of that, there wasn't a single bit of
Oh, you
fight
didn't
detectable in
surrender?
the city, but they continued
All right,
anyway.
we're gonna just
You might be like,
we're just gonna keep
wow,
going then.
what a waste of shells. And to that I say you're missing the bigger picture. The siege, or rape of Durandus, because it wasn't really a siege, paints a very clear picture of what would happen if you rebel against the Imperium. Sure, they could have just shelled for 5 years, accepted the surrender, and then executed a bunch of people. But that sends a message that you can spit on the Imperium and live to tell the tale. No, it needed to be clear that if you deny the Imperium, not only will you die, but your family, your legacy, and your home would also die. And then when you are dead, your corpse would die, until only your ashes and dust would remain. And then your ashes and dust would be blown to smithereens, and then your smithereens would be bombed into oblivion. The Kriegsmen would then be put up against the Necrons, and this
They
would
really are
show
making
off
the
their
point.
weakness and
They're
problems that
very
emerge when you
blunt
reject
about
your own
it.
humanity.
I was like, I
The
wonder
world of
what's next, like, what comes
Hieronymus
after
Thera,
Oblivion?
nailed that pronunciation, I'm getting
Scorched
good at this,
remains are-
was a Necron tomb world that began to awaken. In response to this, the Death Corps of Krieg arrived and began fighting them in a war of attrition. Now, Kriegsmen are good at attrition, but the Necrons don't need food or sleep and can self-repair. That is like attrition god mode. Despite this, the Death Corps were actually able to hold them back and even figure out where the Necron command center was. All they had to do was drop off an atomic weapon there and then bang, the Necrons would go away. Unfortunately for the Kriegsmen, being total dicks to the entire planet and executing hundreds of planetary defense force soldiers because they didn't like being retrained to become Kriegsmen resulted in them being the bad guys. To a point where, on the way to blow up the Necron command nexus, the Kriegsmen were ambushed and fought off by the local human populace who had embraced the Necrons as their gods and saviors from the invading armies of Krieg. Fair enough. Hence the soldiers of Krieg were like, fuck this, and left, allowing the Necrons to take the planet and likely sodomize the human population there. However, this war would not be a waste, as the knowledge they gained fighting the Necrons would prove invaluable in the Offrian War. The Necrons attacked Aramar Prime. The Death Corps arrived, and when the main Necron invasion struck, the only force that was not able to repel the Necron assault, but then was able to lead a counterattack which crippled the Necron army, was the Death Corps. Nice. The Death Corps of Krieg would go on to fight
Man,
Tyranids,
they just go
Tau,
for it.
Kroot, more Tyranids, and Orcs. They would even take a part in the Third War for Armageddon and drive back and win the day many times. The thing is about the Kriegsmen is they aren't actually brave. Being brave is confronting and overcoming your fears through action. Kriegsmen have no fear. If they're told to charge a titan armed with nothing but a shovel, they will do it, not out of a sense of
But they
bravery,
know what to do with
because
that
that is
shovel.
what they've been
They-
commanded to do. They are literally cold
are
machines who have been
shovel
programmed to
fiends.
destroy the enemies of the Imperium, and destroy them they do. They regard human life in the same way they regard ammunition and vehicles, as a resource that needs to be expended. They even ride horses and lead cavalry charges in the 41st millennium. Like, bruh, hell yeah. There's a reason why
Yes.
everyone loves the Death Corps, and
Yes,
there's also a
charging
reason why we
headlong
are
on a
putting them
horse
into the
and beer
Warhammer 40k
40.
squad mod that me and a big team of modders
That's
are working
awesome.
on creating. They're incredibly badass, and if you still aren't convinced, then listen. In a galaxy with demons the size of buildings, with weapons that can destroy entire star systems, with titans that tower over battlefields, and men that can level entire cities with just their mind, a Death Corps guardsman need only a shovel to bring the Emperor's justice upon his enemies. And that does us for today, guys. The lore of the Death Corps of Krieg, and why you should
He's
pick
only
up
a
a shovel
shovel.
and gas mask and bludgeon your enemies to
Such
death.
a cool piece of lore. Just like an entirely new breed, if you will, of soldier. That it's unique, just so different from anything that we've kind of heard.
Well, it's cool to get into, I feel like, especially with the factions, you hear about like mostly the most powerful
Right.
beings, but to get into, just like the grunt soldiers who are badass in their own right, is cool to see. Yeah, it was fun to learn about that aspect of the lore, definitely.
Yeah, and I even liked how they went a little deeper into the people themselves, how they can barely discriminate man from women because the voices are altered in the
Right.
helmets and stuff. Because really, that's not thinking about it now. That's not something we've really. There hasn't been a lot of talk about like sex in the Warhammer universe so far.
Well, except for the lust god of chaos.
Right, of course.
That's all. That's all about sex. We don't talk about anything but sex with that god.
But yeah, no, it was. I thought it was cool. I thought that the production value for it being a YouTube video, well done, entertaining. Yeah, we'd definitely check out more content. Honestly, by this YouTuber. So thank you, Omar Vernon, for suggesting this. A real treat to watch, and let us know in the comments if you have any other lore videos that you'd like us to check out.
Yeah, we definitely love learning more about every aspect of the Warhammer universe. So.
Slowly but surely, it's building itself in here.
Yeah,
In there.
So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and tune in next time.
Yeah, see you then.